In part 3 of this series, we talked about creating your Big Score Take Action Plan checklist. So today in part 4, we're going to talk about taking the steps to get the items on your Take Action Plan checklist updated, repaired, or removed. And you have 3 options: dispute, negotiate, or wait. And it's very possible that your Take Action Plan may include one or all 3 of these options, so it's important to understand the requirements of each. Now, if your decision on an item is to dispute, you must be ready to commit and follow through, because the biggest mistake that most consumers make when disputing is that they get busy and they miss key dates as outlined in the Credit Reporting Acts, which state that the consumer and the credit bureaus have so many days to respond. And when this happens, you have to start the process all over again. And no one likes to waste time. So let's talk about some basic tips when it comes to disputing negative or inaccurate items with the 3 credit bureaus. And be sure to get a pen and paper, because I will be referring to sections of the Credit Reporting Acts that you will want to write down. And first, you want to send a letter to the credit bureau that is reporting the item, giving them a detailed explanation of what you are disputing and exactly what you are asking them to do. Attach copies of any supporting documentation that you have, like statements proving your correct credit card limits and proof of payment showing that you are not late. Send your letter certified, and to avoid delays in their replies, always attach proof of Social Security and proof of address right from the beginning. After you send these initial letters, you wait 35 days, allowing 5 days for mail time. And if the bureaus do not respond within 35 days, you can send a formal complaint letter reminding them that per Section 611 of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, they are required to respond within 30 days from the date that they received your initial dispute. Also remind them that per Section 616 and 617 of the same Act, they are liable for damages, including punitive, and that if necessary, you will seek legal representation. Attach your original dispute letter and proof of delivery to the complaint. Now, just because a credit bureau has determined that an item is verified or investigated does not mean the results are accurate. If you are 100% sure that your claim is true and accurate, and the bureau responds stating that the creditor has verified the information and that the item will not be removed or updated, you must request a reinvestigation under Section 611 of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I highly recommend that you do so within 5 days of receiving the results of their investigation. Now, you can repeat this process as many times as you want. However, after 3 or 4 attempts, I would consider moving on to the next step. Now, if the credit bureau continues to stand their ground on not updating, correcting inaccurate items on your credit report, let's talk about some ways to get their attention. Well, I always find that attaching copies of lawsuit verdicts that show how consumers have prevailed against the bureaus can help you convince the credit bureaus to make the necessary changes to your reports. It lets them know that you are well aware of your consumer rights. Now, this information is easy to find by doing a simple search on the web. The best place to start your research is on the Federal Trade Commission site at www.ftc.gov. Another great tip is to look for other consumer stories on the web. There are many credit repair blogs in which consumers share their strategies, but as with anything, be careful not to take that advice as blind trust, but instead look for helpful hints that pertain to your situation. And aside from hiring a personal attorney to file a lawsuit, the most aggressive way to get the attention of a stubborn credit bureau is to file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission. The best case scenario is that you may be able to have your case added to a class action lawsuit that is already in process. Again, you can file your complaint on the FTC site at ftc.gov. Now, let's talk about negotiation, which is your next option. If your decision on an item is to negotiate, the most important advice that I can give you about negotiating is to do your research. And here are some great resources to help you get to know the ins and outs of the credit counseling and debt negotiation industry. So here are the basics to debt negotiation. Lay your debts out on paper. Validate the collection and charge-off debt with the creditor or collection agency who is reporting it. Verify that the statute of limitations and the 7-year reporting period have not expired. Figure out how much you can realistically afford to pay. Call the creditors to discuss your options or negotiate. And get the agreement in writing, and then follow through with the payment plan as agreed. Another key to successful debt relief is to establish clear goals before you start and be persistent. Many times you may have to contact the creditors or collection agencies several times before reaching an agreement. Be professional even when they're not. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. Be polite, calm, and cool. And two important things to remember. First, negotiate with confidence that you will win. By doing your research, you will gain the knowledge you must have to successfully negotiate derogatory debts. Once a collection agency or creditor realizes that you have done your research, they will realize immediately that you are not a pushover. The tactics that they would normally use on a consumer who doesn't know their rights will now be useless to them, and they will be more apt to agree to your terms. Second, get everything in writing. Words mean nothing when it comes to agreements with collection agencies or creditors and the terms that they agree to with you on the telephone. The best advice I can give you is to never make a payment without getting the terms of your agreement in writing from the collection agency first, no matter what they say, especially if they agree to delete the account in exchange for payment. Now, I'm a true believer in trying to do it on your own, but if you don't have the time or the emotional energy to face creditors and collection agencies head on, it's okay to hire a professional company to help. Just make sure that you do the math on the plans that they propose. In other words, make sure that at the end of the day, it all makes sense. Now, the final option you have in taking action on your to-do checklist is to wait for the derogatory information to fall off of your credit report. Now, in order to make this decision, it is important for you to understand two of the most misunderstood aspects of credit reporting: the statute of limitations and the 7-year reporting period. In this video, I can only touch the surface on the importance and the meaning behind these two dates. So again, it is very important that you do the research to understand both before making a final decision of whether or not you should wait for the derogatory information to fall off of your credit report or not. Now, the 7-year reporting period is the time allowed for derogatory items to remain on your reports. And the statute of limitations is the time period in which a creditor or collection agency has to use legal recourse to collect on a debt. In most instances, charged off debt expires sometimes 3 to 4 years before the 7-year reporting period is up. And although there are some exceptions, both of these dates are usually triggered by the date of last delinquency. So what you need to take into consideration when deciding whether or not to pay a debt or wait until the 7-year reporting period runs out is, if the statute of limitations has expired on a debt, then you are no longer legally liable to pay that debt. You cannot be sued, your wages cannot be garnished. However, the item can still remain on your credit report for the 7-year reporting period. And you may be denied credit due to an open derogatory balance on your credit reports. Also, if at any time you receive indication that a judgment or lawsuit will be filed against you, even if you have proof that the statute has expired, don't ignore it. Deal with it immediately. Even if you can't afford to pay it, you will be surprised at how often you can make an arrangement that will keep the file from going to court. And that should always be your goal. Now, the second consideration is that once the 7-year reporting period runs out, you can have that item removed from your credit report altogether. There are exceptions for public records. However, when that 7-year reporting period expires, you are free and clear. It's a personal decision. If you are a year from the 7-year reporting period and you cannot afford to pay the debt, then wait it out. However, if you were able to pay the derogatory and negotiate a deletion letter, you can arrange to have that item removed earlier and get on with your financial goals. The credit bureaus, collection agencies, and creditors count on you to get bored, get busy, or get frustrated and give up. And knowing this, they'll do everything they can to wear you down. They'll turn a simple dispute to correct a name spelling into a 3-month battle. And unfortunately, other than to follow up diligently and stick to the plan, there's not a lot we can do about it. But when you know that you are right, do not back down, because the alternative is to do nothing. And I trust by now that you realize just how much doing nothing will cost you in the long run. Thanks for tuning in to today's session of the Big Score Take Action Plan. Remember, the professional who sent this video to you is someone who is committed to not only helping you find that perfect home or qualify for mortgage financing, but is also committed to your overall financial health.